I want to show you guys how to make self-watering wooden trays for starting your plants for your garden. Most of us are pretty familiar with these like plastic pots and trays, and not only does it create a lot of plastic waste, they only last like maybe a year. We want to get rid of that cheap plastic, get it out of the garden, and have something that's going to last for several years and make our lives easier. So I came up with these wooden trays for our soil blocks. And the cool thing about them is that they're self-watering. So all I do is I take a tray underneath it. This is a stainless steel dog kennel liner, like what goes under a dog kennel. And it fits 4 of these trays. And then I just fill this with water, and the water wicks up and keeps the blocks at like a perfect level of moisture. So not overwatering or underwatering them. And I can go away for a week at a time while my plants are under the grow lights, and then they'll be ready for spring before no time. So this really does work best for soil blocks, and soil blocks work well for a number of reasons as opposed to trays and pots. It's compressing the soil block medium into basically a little brick. And the cool thing about it, you can see the roots around the sides here, is that they air prune. So whenever the root hits the edge of the block, it stops growing and then grows in another direction. So this plant uses this full volume of soil and uses it really efficiently. And there's also no root circling. There's no roots just going around the bottom. And when I transplant that, it transplants a lot easier without shock. So it's really easy to pick these up. Oops. Really easy to pick them up, take them apart, plant them out in the garden. The other cool thing about soil blocks is you can pot them up really easily. These size blocks can fit into a larger size soil blocker if they outgrow the space that they're in. The other cool thing that I love about soil blocks is they don't take up a ton of space. This tray right here can fit over 105 of these smaller blocks. And so I could easily have 400 plants on this one tray, which is more than enough for most home gardeners. The other cool thing is that these trays are really affordable. I think total cost is about $3 a tray, and they're gonna last a decade, maybe more. I'm even using stainless steel screws, so I can pull those out and build new trays with the same screws if I wanted to. So the material that we're using is a standard cedar untreated fence board. And you can get these at pretty much any hardware store. Each board will make, I think, about 2.5 trays. So that's why they're about $3 a piece, even with the hardware. And there's no treatment on them. I'm not putting any sort of sealer. Cedar is naturally rot resistant. So we're just gonna fill the tray with water, and then the water will begin to wick through the trays and saturate the blocks and keep them at just that perfect level of moisture. So for the soil blocks, you can use any standard potting mix. I just always recommend adding more worm castings or compost to just make it a little more sticky. And of course, like an organic fertilizer that's gonna be slow release. And that's what I'm using here for all of these plants, and they're looking really good. But you can make your own if you'd like to do that too. Just make sure that it's got a sticky consistency. And you can also find our soil blockers on the Mindful Farmer website. And we actually have a huge discount ahead of our fall garden sale. So let's talk through what you're gonna need for this project. Obviously, the fence boards from Lowe's. I mean, I think they were maybe $5 or less. And then we also got some screws. These are stainless steel screws, so I can reuse them for literally decades. They're 8 by 1.5. So whenever we put the sides on the trays, they're not gonna go, they're gonna be what holds the whole tray together, but they won't stick out. So 1.5 inch, you could also use 1.5 inch nails, though there's gonna be a little bit more play with the nails. And then of course, you know, things to measure, tape measure, pencil. I got a screwdriver so I can screw these in by hand, make sure I don't split the wood. I opted not to use glue. You can if you want to, but I haven't seen the need for it. A drill, and then I'm using a circular saw, chop saw, and a table saw. But if you wanted to, you could just use a hand saw or even like a cordless circular saw. So a lot of different options. You can do it as cheap as you want. Just borrow these. Don't go out and buy saws to build a $3 tray. Borrow one from a friend, or use the hand saw. I've done it both ways. This just goes a bit faster. And if you're gonna make a lot, like if you have a farm and you wanna make 200 trays, this would be a really quick way to do that. You could also build what's called a sled for a table saw, and be able to make tons of cuts in repetition really, really quickly. And that's, as we scale, that's the route we're gonna be going. But for these purposes, I'm gonna use the chop saw, a miter saw to make my initial cuts, and then I'll run those cuts through the table saw to get them to the width that I need. So let's get into it. All right, so I'm gonna kind of clean up the workspace a little bit right here. I don't need these things just yet. Move my coffee so I don't get sawdust in it. After I take one more sip, and now I'll start measuring. So the baseboards, there's 2 baseboards on each tray, and each of these are 20 inches long exactly. So I'm gonna go ahead and measure 20. I'm gonna measure right here at the side. I'm gonna add a little bit, a 1/16 of an inch to account for the saw blade, and then an 1/8 of an inch to account for the saw blade again. So that's one board. I'm gonna go ahead and do the same for the second. So you can measure and then cut and then measure and then cut to get really, really accurate. I'm just gonna go ahead and add a little bit of length for that saw blade. So about a 1/16 of an inch for each one, each cut. Now we'll go ahead and make our cut. And as always, safety first, get you some safety glasses or some ear protection. So the leftover piece at the top that has like the dog ears, that's gonna be our side. So we're gonna hold on to that. Almost nothing goes to waste. That's part of the base. Base pieces. So So again, we're going to save the dog ear because that's going to be our sides of the trays. Now we're going to take all these over to the table saw and we'll cut them to width. All right, so the base we're going to make 4 and 11/16 wide. So the measurements for these trays are particular for a reason. It allows you to use the stand-up soil blocker 3 times of any size to maximize the space on the tray without anything hanging off the side. And they also still fit in a standard tray liner. So if you have solid bottom tray liners, these trays should still fit inside of them for watering. You don't have to get the big one that I showed earlier. So I'm gonna go ahead and set my table saw to 4 and 11/16. And then that way I can get really accurate cuts. These will make a 4 and 11/16 cut in our base. 2 of those will go together to make the base of a tray. So let's go ahead and make those cuts. So 4 and 8, 9, 10, 11. Not using my earplugs at all. People on YouTube tend to be really particular about how you do things and the safety things you do, and love to correct you. So try this again. Okay, so I'm going to do another cut on these that I forgot about. So these are dog ear panels. Okay, so these are the top of our cedar fence boards. These are the dog ear sections. So we're going to cut that off. We'll go to 9 5/8 because that's actually the final width of the tray. So 9 5/8. And now this is basically the only scrap for the whole project. We're gonna go ahead and use these on the table saw again. All right, so these are gonna be our upright sides on the trays, the ends of them, and they'll hold the bases together, and they'll also allow you to stack the trays. So we're gonna cut these to 1 3/8 inch thick, and that allows the 1 1/2 inch block to sit beneath the tray. So you can actually start a bunch of trays and stack 6 of them up and carry them all at once. That's also another advantage of these trays is it's really easy to transport them. So let's go and set this to 1 5/8. So 1 5/8, 2, 3, 11/16. So now we're going to make the sides. These are going to be what sit on the tray, allow you to stack it. So you can stack one tray on top of the other one without crushing the soil blocks. And then also it holds the bottom trays together as well. So we're going to make some of those. So we're going to set this to 1 11/16. So just a little bit wider than 1 5/8. Use our push stick. So here we go. From our 2 cedar fence boards, we've got enough for 3 trays. We've got 6 sides and then 6 baseboards, 2 baseboards on a tray. So to assemble them, go over here to our table. And I'm going to use this countersink, which pre-drills the hole for the screws so it doesn't split the wood. That's going to be really important. And then I'm just going to basically line them up by hand. This board has a natural bow to it, and I want to put that bow facing upwards against the side piece so that I can use the screws to kind of draw it in nice and flat. So I can go ahead and just by manually go ahead and line up my corners here. And I'm just making sure it's flush here and flush there. I'll go ahead and put another piece down here to keep it nice and flat. And then I'll pop 2 screws in there. So you can use a screwdriver. A drill is going to be a bit faster. Just go easy. When you get near the end, you can even switch over to a screwdriver. You just want to make sure you're not going to split the wood. So let's go ahead and throw this other piece on here. Again, I'm making sure it's flush. And what you'll notice is when it's flush, there's actually a gap in between there. And that gap allows the water to wick up through the middle of the tray. Let's go ahead and make sure it's flush, flush. Switch back to our countersink. And again, you can use nails if you wanted to. I just find that the screws make a stronger connection. And you could do one screw or 2 screws. I find 2 screws just makes it sit a lot sturdier and not twist at all. But these plans are free, and you just go download them. The goal is to get more people using soil blocks and getting rid of plastic in the garden. And so if putting this out there helps folks and makes gardening easier and more accessible, I'm all for it. But if there's any changes you want to make, by all means, do it what works best for you. This is just kind of a guide to go off of. So making sure it's flush on both those sides, or relatively. Again, I'm going to put the countersink in. And I'll just go ahead and do all 4 holes now that it's all lined up. So I'll apply pressure. Screws. All right. Again, I'm going to make sure it's lined up. There we go. Oh no, that one went a little too far and then I split it. The very thing I said I didn't want to do. It's okay. So you can see that gap in the middle, so let that water up through. And then because of the height there, we can stack them up and still have the soil blocks. So let's go ahead and make another one. So now we have our finished Mindful Farmer cedar soil block trays, self-watering. These are gonna last for years and years. This one's already 1.5 years old. I've been using it nonstop. It sits out in the sun. I don't store it in any way, and it's still really strong. No signs of rotting or anything like that. I made it really easy to be able to get the soil blocks on and off. You can use like a spatula and slide them on if you need to move them or scale them up. Again, that groove in the middle helps the water come up through it. And then these sides are designed to where if you were gonna, let's say you're gonna move a bunch of soil blocks, you could start them and seed them and transport them, but then they've already sprouted and they're ready to be transplanted out in the garden. You can take an empty tray and put it on top and then use that as the base for the next tray and then put it on top. So now you can transport literally 200 transplants just like that. Again, soil blocking supplies is on the Mindful Farmer website. Be sure to check that out. Our standing soil blockers are 20% off. Plus we're doing a giveaway with those. The PDF is free and again on our website. So make sure you download that along with our other PDF resources. And of course we ship our potting mix nationwide. If you want to mix your own, use a standard potting mix. Make sure you add compost or worm castings and a long season organic fertilizer. So I really think that you'll love using these standard trays. Getting plastic out of the garden is always a priority more sustainable. And then also just the ease of being able to go out of town for the weekend and not have to worry about your plants. Because they bottom water and they self-water, just being able to set that in a tray, fill the tray with water, and leave for 3 or 4 days and know that my transplants are taken care of is huge. And I'm all about making gardening easier and more accessible. So be sure to follow along, check out our other videos for more great resources on how to farm sustainably and affordably and easily, or more easily, something like that.